debate tonight. Fox Business Network promising to hold a substantive debate focusing on the economy. How different will it be? Let's bring in CNN senior media correspondent, host of Reliable Sources, Brian Stelter, and CNN senior media reporter and for media and politics, Mr. Dylan Byers. Good to have you both here. Well, you got a Cavuto and a Bartiromo. Those are Italian names. That's always a good start, as we like to say. What do you expect tonight, Mr. Stelter? It is Fox. Does that mean anything? It's also a business network that gives them a comparative advantage.
I spoke with Mrs. Bartiromo. She does have that beautiful Italian accent. She talked about how she's not going to put up with any nonsense from these candidates. If there are more cries of media bias, I have a feeling that she and Cavuto will shut it down pretty quickly. This is Fox, which means the candidates might not complain as much about the questions. Of course, Fox is a favorite network of conservatives. Fox Business is a smaller sibling channel. This is the biggest day in their history, as Adweek put it yesterday. A big chance to show off the channel. So any mistakes, any screw-ups are going to look bad for the channel. But I have a feeling, Chris, that from Roger Ailes on down to Bartiromo and Cavuto and everybody else, they know exactly what they're doing tonight. They're not going to let it get out of control the way the CNBC debate did.
Okay, so Dylan, do they bring up any of the discrepancies in Ben Carson's childhood stories, or do they not touch it?
Yeah, I believe they will, and in fact, I think Bartiromo suggested as much to Brian just yesterday. But the way they do it matters. They have to do it in a very nuanced way because, of course, this entire Fox Business debate is happening in the context of the CNBC debate, of the sort of protests against the media, the pushback against the media that we saw from the candidates and from critics after the debate. So every question that the moderators are asking tonight has to be done in a very careful, substantive, nuanced way. So how they address the issues about Ben Carson's history, that's going to be really interesting to see.
Brian, what does that sound like? What are those questions?
I think it's about tone, right? It's about a respectful tone, even though the questions can be as sharp as they possibly can be.
Right.
I think both of you, frankly, Allison and Chris, are experts in that and getting the tone right while challenging these candidates. Now, it is only 2 hours. We've got 8 candidates on stage, 2 hours. They have longer opportunities to rebuttal and to respond to people. So, you know, we'll see how many questions actually are able to get raised.
But you also
these candidates
have to remember,
might chew up a lot of time in their responses.
Brian, you know, we've been talking about the moderators. I would suggest way too much. I mean, I think that they have to be present. They have to do their job, but they should not be the focus. What the focus is going to be what's coming at them, what the tone of the candidates is. Let's play Donald Trump as a taste of exactly what is working right now in this GOP primary, and then let's talk about how they handle this.
People are getting away with murder. I never saw anything like this. You can say anything about anybody, and their poll numbers go up, no matter what you do.
Now, listen to what he just said, Dylan. I don't know what's going on. You can say anything about anybody, meaning he attacks people, and their polls still go up. You have to remember the mindset of what's being confronted, you know, with these moderators is if they start going at each other that way, not about policy, not about economics, what is a moderator to do? You have to let him just go at it, right?
Well, yes, certainly there's only so much a moderator can do. It's really funny to hear Donald Trump say that because, of course, he was the one who made this campaign, you know, the sort of unprecedented campaign where you can say anything and get away with it. He really sort of created that this time around. So it's interesting to see him sort of commenting on it as a spectator. But you're absolutely right. Look, there's only so much the moderators can do. The most they can hope for is to sort of control the debate, ask substantive questions so they don't get a ton of pushback from the candidates themselves. And then really, look, it's a debate. It's not a forum. You got to let them go at it a little bit.
I also hope people listen for what they don't hear. They're going to be asked questions. Look, we know Cavuto and Bartiromo. They're at the top of the game. They know business very well. They've been doing it for years. They're going to say, so what are you going to do about taxes? Listen for what you hear about what I'll do with taxes versus how the current situation stinks and how nobody else on the stage can do it as well as they can.
Yeah, if you hear specifics and you hear them laying out specifics. But, Brian, that leads me to my next question, and that is, it's logical for Fox Business Network to say, we're just going to stick to policy. We're only going to talk about the substance. But, of course, voters also want to hear about someone's past, and they like testing somebody's temperament. And that makes sort of for the fireworks of the night, and that's always interesting. So can the moderators really just stick to sort of the castor oil of policy?
I think if they do, the reviews will be rather poor because people will say it was a dull debate. I think you're absolutely right that people do enjoy the fireworks. They enjoy the personality and the personal conversations about these candidates. We might all say we want substance, but the reality is some of these candidates don't even want to talk about substance. Some of these candidates, like Donald Trump, would rather talk about personality, would rather take personal shots at each other. Some of these candidates don't even have detailed economic policies published yet. So we'll see how much detail they actually want to share. But I think the difference between a good debate and a great debate would be if we learn new things about the differences between the candidates. Yes, there are some differences between these candidates' views of the economy. Not huge differences, but there are some. If we can actually see those differences on stage, if we can actually have them expressed, that'll make for a successful debate tonight.
Dylan, I think maybe the middle space will be that you'll hear a Cavuto or a Bartiromo, who are more than smart enough to do this, cherry-pick policy positions and say, well, what would you do differently? And you've said this in the past. How would that work? Then you wind up getting to the same place, right, where a competitive advantage and who's better than whom.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there's always the risk here that, you know, it goes too far into the weeds, right, too far into policy. And look, like Brian said, there's a reason that 24 or 25 million people are tuning into some of these debates, and it's not to hear a policy discussion, right? People do want those fireworks. So how you have a substantive debate, don't draw the criticism that CNBC drew, while at the same time creating, you know, entertaining television, that's going to be the challenge for them tonight.
I'll bet my lunch money.
Is there is a civil war going on in the GOP, and these debates are our opportunity to see those battles being fought.